Yeah, I feel like no matter how this video ends, the comments will tell us we're wrong, but we already spent time making this video, so let's piss some people off. The console wars have been going on for over 2 decades now, and people will still argue that the console they bought is the best one, because they don't want to regret their purchase. Well, as a channel that thinks all consoles are trash, I think we're a fair mediator to do the comparison. For this video, we're going to be comparing the Xbox Series X, the PS5 Disc Edition, and the OLED Nintendo Switch. We'll be determining the winner of the console war by 6 different categories. The categories will include cost, strength, availability, gaming libraries, controller, and the other variations of their consoles. Cost is really straightforward. To sum it up, how much of the green stuff do I need to spend to get a box or weirdly curved toaster that will help me escape my miserable social life? The answer is not too much. The Nintendo Switch will only set you back around $340, and the Xbox Series X and the PS5 will cost you $500 retail. But with the scalp prices, you're looking at around $600 for the Series X and around $700 for the PS5. So to no one's surprise, this puts the Switch in first place in this category. The next thing to go over is the strength of the consoles themselves. Yeah, I don't think the Nintendo Switch is going to be the first for very long. That 720p display just isn't going to cut it. The Series X and the PS5, on the other hand, are very, very close. Both console specs look almost identical. We say almost because the slightly higher clock CPU and the extra teraflops puts the Series X just slightly above the PS5. Also, the Xbox Series X ships with an extra 200GB of space, but with the PlayStation's cheaper storage upgrades compared to the Xbox, we'll call it even. With the slightly better CPU performance, the Xbox Series X is in first place, with the PS5 in second place in this category and last place overall. This next category is not going to help the PS5 either, and that's availability. Sony did come out and say that they're ramping up production of the PS5 in the near future, so their problems will hopefully not last much longer. But at the time of this video, PS5s are the hardest to find, so they're ranked last in this category. The Xbox Series X's are also relatively hard to find, but if you look hard enough, you can find one pretty close to retail. The OLED Nintendo Switch is by far the easiest one to find out of the 3, even though it's significantly newer. You can find it in stock at a wide variety of stores for its retail price, so a rare, yet very important win for the Switch. So halfway through the comparison, we have the Switch and the Series X tied for first, and the PS5 slightly behind them. But with these next few categories, a lot is about to change. A console's gaming library is one of the biggest factors that people consider before they buy a console. For example, why would someone buy a Nintendo Switch if they want to play Call of Duty Warzone? Speaking of the Switch, it has by far the smallest library of games. If you don't like The Crossing of Animals, or a chubby short guy with a red hat and a pedo stash, there just isn't much for you on the Switch. The PS5 and the Xbox share a lot of their gaming library. With that being said, each system does have their exclusive titles. The PS5 has games like Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, Gran Turismo 7, and one of our personal favorites, Ratchet & Clank. While the Xbox Series X has games like Halo Infinite, Forza Motorsport, and State of Decay 3. With these exclusive games in mind, we will be placing the Xbox Series X in first place. We would like to note, if the MLB The Show was still a PlayStation exclusive, the PS5 would have taken this category easily. With controllers, it's very hard to argue which one has the better design between them all. People have different preferences, and that is something that we cannot fairly rank just based on our opinions alone. So, we'll be ranking them based on their durability, which is arguably more important than the design. First off, the Switch controllers are by far the worst out of them all. They can have connectivity issues along with some pretty insane stick drift after only a little bit of use. With that being said, they rank dead last. Next, we have the Xbox controller. We say just the Xbox controller and not the Xbox Series X controller because they're almost identical. They barely made any changes and their durability is somehow worse with their new generation controller compared to their old ones. Hence, why people buy the Xbox Elite controller. The PS5 controller is by far the most durable of them all. You don't need to return them as often. It takes a lot of wear and tear to see any sort of stick drift or sticky buttons. Although it's not for everyone, the haptic feedback was a nice addition to their new generation controller. This earns them first place in the controller category. Now, the final category, the other variants of these consoles. First, we have the Switch. The Switch has 2 variants, the normal version and the OLED version. The difference in price between the two is nothing crazy, with the OLED version costing only $40 more than the $300 base model. The only real difference between the two is the screen. This is kind of obvious because there is an OLED screen version, but the OLED screen actually allows the screen to be bigger. The bezel of the normal Switch allows for a 6.2-inch screen, while the bezel of the OLED version allows for a 7-inch screen. Besides that, there is no difference performance-wise between the two. Next, we have the PS5. There are 2 different variations of the PS5, the disc version and the digital version. The digital PS5 costs $400 retail, while the disc version costs $500. Unless you really want a disc for your PS5, the digital one is the way to go. There's no performance difference between the two. The Xbox Series X's other variant is the Xbox Series S. The Series S is slightly weaker than the Xbox Series X and is only capable of 1440p gameplay. But with a slight difference in performance between the two variants, there's a bigger difference in the price tag, with the Series S costing $200 less than the X's $500 retail price. The biggest thing to note for the Xbox Series S is availability. You can find them basically anywhere besides Dollar Tree. $50 Tree? The consumer-friendly price tag of the Series S and the availability makes them number 1 in this category. With that being said, the Xbox Series X wins, but the PS5 is a close second, followed by the Nintendo Switch. let the arguments begin.